Hi, Marian. Thank you so much for joining me on the Well Vegan Travel Podcast.
Thank you so much, Bridie. It's such a pleasure being here.
I am so pleased to have you on because we're talking about a region in South Africa, a region that I've got my fingers crossed that I'm going to get to at the end of this year. And that is basically the Lowveld region in South Africa, a place that I've never been to, but I've heard so much about it. And I really am excited that you're going to be talking about this region. We've had a couple of episodes of the podcast talking about the Greater Kruger National Park, but we've never really done a deep dive into the region. So I'm really excited to do that. So why don't you tell us before we get started, what is it that you do in the vegan travel space?
Okay. So I am the co-owner and manager and also the chef for a guest house in Skumanskloof, Mpumalanga, South Africa. And this guest house is called Old Joe's Kaia. Now, before I do anything further, I'd just like to say that Kaia means home. And Joe was a very prominent road worker in 1927, and that's what we are named after. We are basically in Mpumalanga, and I also want to explain to you that Mpumalanga means the place where the sun rises.
Ah, fantastic.
So we are basically halfway between OR Tambo Airport and Maputo, which is the Mozambican coast where there's a harbor. This is a main corridor going through, and it goes from the Highveld. I just want to explain to you that there's a Highveld and then you get to the Lowveld. So we really are the gateway, the portal to the Lowveld. Old Joe's Kaia guest house here.
Tell us a little bit about your accommodation.
We're very small and very intimate guest house. We have a total of 8 rooms, which basically means we can host a maximum of 16 people. Our meals are all vegan. The whole guest house is vegan. There's nothing here that doesn't ring well for vegans. We basically do a dinner, bed, and breakfast arrangement. Sometimes if people arrive too late, then obviously they're not going to have dinner. But most of our bookings come in as a dinner, bed, and breakfast booking. We are ideally situated for people coming from OR Tambo, which is the international airport in Johannesburg, going down to the tourist attractions in the Lowveld. There's so many, but I think the biggest one really is the Kruger National Park. And that's where people head to first, and then suddenly realize that there's also an incredible amount of other things to do. On our own property, there's also just as much to do. We have a beautiful 7-circuit classical labyrinth, which we built in 2010. And that's a really lovely place to just settle down and do a bit of contemplation. You've just arrived, and people are normally a bit frazzled, long aircraft and road. In some cases, people are driving on the wrong side of the road. But coming to Old Joe's Kaia is really a lovely place to sink into and relax and just get your feet back on the ground and enjoy our hospitality.
It sounds like your accommodation is situated in a rural area.
Yes, that's perfectly correct. We really are in the middle of nowhere, yet we are on the main corridor. So we're very accessible, but once you are here, it's really rural. I have to say that Skumanskloof, which is basically a valley, is one of the most beautiful areas of the country. And we live in a spectacular paradise. The views are beautiful. We live in the mountains, actually, and strangely enough, the mountains that we live in is also part of the Drakensberg, which is about 400 or 500 kilometers away from here, but it still forms part of the big Drakensberg. So it's rural, mostly citrus farming, macadamia farming, avocados, and so on. It really is farming area, and we just like this little oasis in the middle of nowhere.
Can you give a sense what the vibe of the place is in terms of the rooms and the common areas? Like, what could people expect to feel as they are spending their time with you?
Okay, we have a main building, our hosting area, which is basically where all the meals, and our reception area. That's where people would meet us first. Me and my partner, normally either of us or both of us would be there. We are totally into our music, which people love. We have a very specific music taste. It's warm and it's very comforting. And if you walk out through the main building onto the balcony, it's at treetop level. You really just see the whole garden in front of you as well as the mountains. It's really just a beautiful welcome. The rooms are all bedrooms with ensuite bathrooms. All the bathrooms have got a shower as well as a bathtub. There's a tea and coffee facility. And some of our rooms have got a small fridge and an air fryer. If there's somebody that wants to really just skip the meals and do something in their own room, then that's perfectly okay. And then the whole property is very small, actually, but we have beautiful walks. There's a meander down to the labyrinth. Our swimming pool is very, very highly regarded because it's just set in such a beautiful place. It's right amongst the forest. We feel it's a little bit subtropical. All the little pathways and things meander through the property past our vegetable house, which is also where we grow a lot of our own vegetables, especially all the greens, because I'm fanatical about really good salads and good cuisine coming from our kitchen. The ambience is warm and we personally host. In other words, people, when they arrive, I like to know their names and I like to know where they come from. So I like a personal connection. And we go out of our way to actually assist people on their way further. Where should they go? Is the weather right? No, you can't go there. Rather change your trip this way around. So we love to make sure that people really enjoy our magnificently beautiful area to the best of their ability.
Fantastic. I love it. I'm also wondering, because you are situated on this highway that gets a bit of traffic going past it, I'm wondering whether people who are just driving past can come in for meals. Do you have a lunch service as well? Can people come in for coffee or snacks or even maybe takeaway picnic lunches or something?
What we prefer doing, because we're such a small kitchen, is for people to phone us, listen, we're half an hour away, or are you open for lunch today? Sometimes I'm in town and then I'm not available to make lunch, and everything is freshly prepared. A lot of people actually already book their lunches while they're still at home before they even get onto a plane, is to make sure that there is a booking for you and we're waiting for you and so on. So it's not a restaurant per se where people can just move in and out. It's very intimate, it's very customized and very personalized. I also would know exactly what you eat and what you don't like to eat and so on and so forth. That really calls for, can I just chat to you beforehand? Please make a booking. Yeah.
How long have you owned this property? Was it vegan from the very start?
Okay, that's an interesting question. Alto's Kaia was started by my grandparents in 1954, but they only came here for a small period of the year because where they lived was so cold up in the Highveld. It went out of the family when my grandfather died, and then it went through to many other different people. But my partner and myself bought Alto's Kaia back in 2006, and we've been here ever since. I never thought we would stay so long, but it's so spectacular to live here. It wasn't vegan at the point when we bought it. I was a vegetarian then, and I ran the kitchen, but not really cooking. In 2012, I went vegan, and in 2016, we made the big jump and we went completely vegan. It's been vegan for 8 years now. It's interesting, and I'm also very grateful that we can offer something to vegans coming past because it's difficult. South Africa is not always everywhere very aware of veganism. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the idea of being able to get a slap-up meal by booking in advance sounds absolutely amazing. Can you give me an example of what a typical dinner might be?
Oh, yes. Tonight, for example, on the menu, we have a corn and cauliflower soup, which we serve with an olive flapjack. Okay, I love the combination of olives together with corn and cauliflower. Then we have a roasted tempeh, avocado, and seaweed salad as a second course. And our main course is a lentil sausage rolls, which was basically in a puff pastry, with a cheese sauce, and the cheese we make with cashews, roasted vegetables. And then our dessert tonight is an apple tempura, which is the crispy fried apple with vegan ice cream and a caramel sauce.
That sounds absolutely amazing. That sounds like something that you could find in the middle of a city in a vegan restaurant, yet you can experience it in the countryside. All right. So let's talk about the Lowveld region. I'm a little bit embarrassed to say that until we started running trips in South Africa, I really didn't understand my geography. I knew Cape Town was on the coast, but I didn't really understand like where Pretoria was and Johannesburg. So can you give us a little bit of a orientation of this part of South Africa?
Okay, so the Lowveld basically lies in between the Highveld, which is where Johannesburg and all the gold mines are. It drops from 1,700 meters in Johannesburg down to 400 meters in the Lowveld. That basically is 400 meters above sea level, which is also the height of Mozambique. Now, we lie exactly halfway in between, and we are about 250 kilometers from Johannesburg, from OR Tambo Airport. So this Lowveld area basically is considerably lower and considerably hotter. The hot, sunny South Africa that you always hear about is typical Lowveld with a very high rainfall measure, but it's full of incredibly beautiful natural attractions. Then, of course, plugged into all those natural attractions are beautiful things which people have created, like zip lines and lifts going into gorges and beautiful trails. Like in Barberton, there's a beautiful geo trail, which actually is very interesting for people who are into geography. How did this all form? How do all these mountains get to be here? The beautiful greenstones and so on. The panorama route basically meanders from the Lowveld up again back into a bit of mountainous area. That's where all the beautiful waterfalls are. You get the Bridal Veil Falls. It's called that because it really looks like the veil of a bride. We get Bergsluk potholes. We get God's Window, where you look for miles over the Lowveld. It really is spectacular. And then going up to Blyde River Canyon with the 3 rondavels. The panorama route is really something that nobody must ever miss. You need to do it from the beginning to the end. Kaia is perfectly positioned for that because we're right at the very bottom end of it. So if you leave after an early breakfast, your first stop would be the Sodwala Caves. The Sodwala Caves are the second oldest, I think, caves in the world, and Dolomitic Cave, and it truly is spectacular. Then from there onwards, you would go through to Sabi. Then from there to Graskop, which is a lovely little tourist town, lots of little things to buy, very arty, lots of artwork and stuff. From then onwards, you go up to God's Window, Bergsluk potholes, and so on. Some people do it en route, and then they go into the Kruger National Park from the northern side. So let me just explain that the Kruger National Park lies in a long strip along the Lowveld, and it lies on the border with Mozambique. So the whole of the Kruger National Park is low and hot. So if you are with us, it will take you about an hour, maybe an hour and a half, depending, to get to the southern part of the gates or the southern part of the Kruger Park. And you would then meander inside the park all the way up for as long as your time allows you. Oh, but you need time. And so you need to plan really well. But what a lot of people do is they leave us, do the panorama route, and then enter at the top and then come down southways. So there's lots of ways of actually planning the trip. And if you really do your homework, you can pack in a lot in a short period of time. Along the way, I need to say that there are also many other attractions, which is really worthwhile. For example, Nelspruit, or Mbombela, as it is now called in our new South Africa, is our capital city. It's hardly a city from an international point of view. It's not really all that big, but we have a magnificent botanical garden, which should not be missed if you're driving through Nelspruit. That is really spectacular. We also have Chimp Eden, 5 kilometers outside of Nelspruit, which was started, also chaired and funded by Dr. Jane Goodall. So she really, really cares for the chimpanzees. So that's a fantastic opportunity to see chimpanzees that have been rescued from horrid conditions and so on. So you can go and see where they're living out their lives and how they are cared for. It's quite an interesting stop en route and should be managed in. You should find a way of putting it in. Yeah. There's also a beautiful little town half an hour from here called Kaapsehoop. It means hope of the Cape. The old diggers and the gold hunters thought that they had reached the sea when they were looking for gold. when they arrived on a misty day and they thought the sea was there. And then they thought, oh, maybe there's the sea's here and we're going to find gold here. Little did they know that they were very far away from the sea still. But Kaapsehoop is a spectacular little town full of history. It was started before the gold rush in Johannesburg, actually. So that's before 1890. So it's full of history, where they were panning for gold and diamonds as well. But what is so spectacular about Kaapsehoop is that there are, at the moment, currently about 200 wild horses roaming the area, completely wild, in 4 herds. And they're the leftovers of what was left behind when the gold rush was started in Johannesburg, and everybody just upped and left everything behind, including the horses. So the horses have become a major attraction at Kaapsehoop and is really amazing to see. Kaapsehoop is also quite an interesting little town as far as the history is concerned. It is confined by the forests around it, so it's very small and can't expand. But you find a lot of interesting arty people, quaint little shops, nice little eateries. So it's a real touristy place, if I may say so, but really nice. It's not overly commercialized, no.
When you were talking about doing the panorama route, really we're talking about like people who are self-driving, and then they would go into Kruger National Park and then they would drive through there and do a circuit.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. I just want to say it is a lot of driving, but everywhere where all these beautiful natural attractions are, you get out of the car, there's a little walk to the bottom of the waterfall or to the waterfall. Everywhere you go, it depends on your time schedule. It depends on whether you feel you need a break. Otherwise, you end up just sitting in the car. It is long distances, but also there's a lot of opportunities to take a break. Yeah.
I love it. And I'm imagining if people go through Kruger National Park, driving south back to the highway again, of course, there's going to be a lot of things to do in Kruger National Park. They would need to have the right kind of vehicle. Would they need to have particularly good driving skills to be able to do that? Is it safe in terms of, do you need to have a lot of experience to drive this way? Are there any safety issues to be concerned about?
It's a lot of questions, but I can just say that a normal sedan car or vehicle would be perfectly okay. But if you decide to do some off-road stuff, obviously a lot of people hire or rent out 2x4s or 4x4s. Like the South Africans are very much into that, but you don't need to do that. We have an array of vehicles available as you get to the airport, so that those can be booked prior. But as far as safety is concerned, you would need to really just understand that big animals are big, and you don't ever get out of your car. There are cats around. They are predators. They are not tame. They are really wild. You don't hang out of the sunroof of your car. Not that type of thing. But those guidelines are all there when you enter the park. You get a pretty good idea of what you can and what you should not be doing in the Kruger Park. If you have any doubt in any way, I suggest that as an international is to take a safari, and that you can book once you are in the park. You find your place to sleep overnight, and then you can book a safari, either a day safari, early morning safari, or a night safari. And then those people really know where to go and where to find the animals that you are looking for, because they talk about the big 5. Okay, the big 5 is what people are after. And when they come out, the first thing we want to know is, did you see the big 5? Not that it makes any difference. Everything is really spectacular, even if you don't find the big 5. As far as safety is concerned, in the area where you would be driving, we have a document on our website that actually states guidelines for international travelers. For example, don't pay cash to anybody. Don't be fooled by the authorities. They take chances. They know that you're international because they know what the hire cars look like. They would say you've been speeding or whatever, but just never pay any cash. Don't do silly things. Don't stop when somebody tells you to stop. It's not any more difficult or any more treacherous than what it is in many other countries, I can tell you. So yeah, we generally don't have any problems. Don't drive through townships. Everybody knows that. And don't drive at night, ever. Yeah.
Yes, that seems to be the general rule
Yeah.
in South Africa generally,
Yeah.
even in Cape Town
Yeah.
and the cities.
Yeah.
Take Ubers if you're going in the evening somewhere. And unfortunately, there is a considerable amount of crime in South Africa. With some sensible precautions,
Yes.
you really don't put yourselves in any treacherous
situation.
For sure.
I can just also emphasize that it's extremely important that you have a telephone with you. We still find international people traveling without being able to make an emergency call. Even arriving at our gate sometimes, if the gate is closed, they don't have a cell phone to phone. So it's really a great advantage to get your SIM at the airport so that you are really mobile in all ways. And that you also have some telephone numbers, like this is a toll road. It's absolutely beautiful. And there's a toll number that you can phone if you're in trouble. Make sure that you have all these numbers, and they're everywhere, but make sure that you have them on your phone or with you so that you can call when you're in trouble. Make sure you have the telephone number of your next destination, that you can call them and say, I'm having a problem. What do I do? And so on. Just have a little bit of the common sense and everything is okay.
Absolutely. And these days, even if we are using our data from home, like our own personal mobile plan, that's gone are the days where it was like $5 a minute to make a global roaming call. You can get packages from your mobile provider at home. For example, in Canada, it's $15 a day. And then we get basically the exact same amount of data and calls as we would normally. You can really not have to spend so much. And of course, getting a local SIM can be really helpful as well and is often cheaper than that. But I always like to tell people that it's sometimes you've got to think about that, because if you take out your regular SIM, if you still have a physical SIM and you put in a new SIM, and then you have to receive like passcodes from your bank because there's some sort of fraud alert. You're in a new country and your bank is all of a sudden alerted that you are in a new place and it won't let you pay for that gas that you just filled up on.
Exactly.
You can end up in a bit of a sticky situation. So
absolutely,
just a bit of a suggestion for people for sure. Okay, well, it sounds like people can travel pretty independently if they want to in this area. Something I'm curious about is whether outside of the Kruger National Park and the greater Kruger area, can we see a lot of wildlife as we are just driving around?
No, not really. Wildlife are pretty much confined to specific areas, I think, for their own protection. The Wild Cheetah facility is up near Hoedspruit. That's very interesting because that's where they really rehabilitate cheetah and so on. And then, as I said, Chimp Eden is down at the bottom. But I think that's more or less where you are. The rest are really inside and very protected. We're very protective over the wildlife. It's not that you can just go somewhere like a zoo. There's no such things here. No. A lot of people do not do their homework about malaria. The Kruger Park itself definitely requires a malaria precaution. Where we are, we don't have malaria, but an hour away from here, because it's so much lower, it's another 500 meters that you drop down. The lower you go, the hotter it is and the more water there is. So that's where the standing water creates a lot of malaria. So I just want to make travelers aware, when you go into a malaria area, understand what it means, what you need to take. Do you need to take something? And when do you need to take something? Internationals really need to take the necessary precautions. That's definitely the one thing that I would emphasize.
Are there any other health issues that people should be aware of?
Bilharzia normally doesn't occur in areas where you have water falling. So the waterfalls and those areas, if you happen to put your feet into the water, don't worry about it. It's where water runs fast, you don't have to worry. And I don't think you're going to get anywhere where there's not water running fast. Also know where are the closest hospitals. Make sure you go to a private hospital.
Even though there's nothing to worry about, can you explain what this Bilharzia condition is? We had some doctors on one of our trips in Botswana a year and a half ago, and that was something that was concerning to them. They were worried about that, and turns out that there was very low risk in the areas because the water was running, but it's transmitted through snails, correct?
That I don't know. My hubby says yes, it is transmitted through snails, but when do we get snails? Okay.
I love
And,
it.
anyway, but Belange is not something that we're worried about in Mpumalanga, in this area. It's lower down where the water is starting to run slower, whereas malaria will show up within 10 days. And then you have to get to a doctor very quick because it's a very fast-moving conditions. Belange is not life-threatening at all, and it's treatable. It's not an issue for us at all.
I'd love to know a little bit about some kind of more adventurous activities that might be on offer in the Lowveld area. You mentioned zip lining. I just wondered whether there were any other really cool, exciting events or races or something for the more extreme adventurer amongst us.
There's paragliding. And Barberton, yes. Barberton is where I was telling you about the Geo Trail. It's a beautiful road, but there's also paragliding there. For the guys who'd like to jump off high mountains and just glide over the Lowveld, is absolutely beautiful. We have 3 zip lines that I know of. The one is here at Sodala Caves. Then there's one at Graskop. And that's quite spectacular because it zips across the cliff or the gorge, so to speak. And then there's a lift going right down into the actual gorge from where you will come back up. It's an amazing installation. And then there's also a zip line near Hazy View. Hazy View is very much a central point at the center area of entering the Kruger Park. The Kruger Gate, for example, is close by. Pabeni Gate is close by. But near Hazy View is another zip line, which people talk about a lot, and that's very popular. There's also White River rafting in the Sabi River itself. So that's something to look up and book, and it's very popular. About half an hour from us, there's a lot of people doing mountain climbing. It's really quite spectacular vistas. It's very popular. Even amongst the South Africans, there's clubs and doing the abseiling. It's called Waterval Boven, meaning it's the top part of where the waterfalls are.
Something that I think you've alluded to, but I don't think we've highlighted much, is just the incredible landscapes that are there. They're really like a geologist's dream. Yeah. Can you describe some of those to us?
Everywhere you travel, you want to stop and find a lookout point because it's mountainous. The landscape really changes all the time, but it's exceptionally green because it's such a high rainfall area. It's part of the Drakensberg range of mountains, the biggest range of mountains in South Africa. If you go to the Sodala Caves, for example, they will explain to you in detail how all of this was formed. Why is it so old, the Dolomitic Caves? It's really spectacular. There are areas where the general public would not go through. And for your daredevils, it's a crawl. It's a crystal tour going through the Sodala Caves where you basically crawl through narrow little cavities and things to get to the crystal cave. I've never done it because I can't do that claustrophobic stuff. But apparently it is spectacular. The geographic history is unbelievable in this area. If you go towards the Barberton side, also there was a lot of gold mining, but the Geo Trail is truly beautiful. The road bikers love to do that trail because the road is so beautiful. It winds through the mountains, and then a few kilometers you stop and you have a lookout point. And then they explain to you how this whole landscape in front of you actually formed and how it was conceived by nature millions of years ago. It is so beautiful.
Yes, I really encourage people listening to this to go and have a look at the pictures in the show notes or just to Google some of these destinations that we're talking about because geological formations are just incredible. You've touched a little bit on the history of the region, particularly in terms of the gold mining, but I would love to know about the cultural festivals and traditions and practices that people celebrate here and how travelers might participate in those things.
In the Kruger Park itself, and when you go to the private reserves, they have a lot of shows, so to speak, where you would be able to see the indigenous dancing and rituals and so on. It's an interesting mix of people where we are. It's the combination or the culmination of the Shangans from the top, the Swazis from the south. So there's a lot of mixture. There's not a pure race where we are. I think that kind of dilutes it a little bit in terms of celebrating their historical things. They tend to go back to their homelands or back to their original settlements for celebration.
Okay, so interesting. What's the culinary scene in the region? I don't want to assume that there are tons of vegan options everywhere, but are there any local dishes and opportunities that vegans might be able to enjoy, or maybe ingredients that people might like to check out that are native to the area? I would love to learn about that.
Firstly, let me say that we are so blessed with incredible fruit, nuts, avocados, that type of thing, mangoes when it's in season, lychees, macadamia nuts, a lot of macadamia products because there's so much going on. Pecan nuts, there's no lack in really abundant, beautiful food. Remember that the South Africans are pretty much meat eaters. There's a lot of game and venison and that type of stuff going on. But I also do want to say to the vegans in particular that you need to be very well prepared when you come. Most of the places that I would suggest you go to is if you don't stay in a private reserve, then make sure you get a self-catering unit. And it's easy to self-cater. You can find the stuff everywhere. South Africa has come a long way in terms of vegan products, the cheeses and the faux meats and so on. So that's everywhere. There's a particular place in Nelspruit, in our capital city, called Doppio Zero, as in the Italian Doppio Zero. It's a franchise, but they have really beautiful vegan dishes on their menu, which I love. In White River, there's a lovely place called Yoon's Eatery. Also, for anybody flying out or into KMI, that's our Kruger and Mpumalanga International Airport. There's also a Yoon's Eatery there, and they cater very definitely for vegans. As far as the local food is concerned, I'm not aware of anything that has opened since COVID. But yeah, we run cooking classes, and you can always schedule your trip around cooking class at Aldous. Yeah. And then just do local things, the greens from the garden and from the valley. Food is really abundant, and food is really good in the Lowveld.
Are you able to share some tips or some ways in which travelers who are coming through this area can travel a little bit more responsibly and make sure that they're doing their best to avoid exploitation of local communities or exploitation of the environment?
It's interesting. I think the area is pretty robust to that. There's a lot of hawkers, what we call hawkers, people next to the road. I always say, if they give you a price, just pay them what they asked for. Don't try and bargain them down because you're paying for a meal for somebody tonight. And the craft is beautiful. There's some beautiful woodwork, basketware, fabrics that are printed by local people, and so on. Everywhere you go, especially if you get closer to the Kruger, there's some spectacular pieces of artwork. But I really think to be responsible, and that is something that I feel very strongly about, is if you ask somebody how much they want for something, then pay them what they want for it. Don't try and bargain them down. The price is low as it is. It's comparatively incredibly low. If you had to go and buy those items at an international shop at the airport, you'd pay 3 times as much. The same goes for food. And I must say that I have a policy that I would rather buy food from somebody off the street than what I would buy in a commercial corporate environment. Because the people on the street really know how to grow beautiful, organic food, and they need that money desperately, far more than the corporates. It's just a policy that we have. You do see them. We call them the gokos. It's the old woman. They sit next to the road and they have a little metal plate and there's some tomatoes and green beans and very basic things there. But if you're self-catering, that's the stuff you want. That's the stuff with flavor. At the same time, you've also assisted somebody in a beautiful gesture by stopping by and paying for them. Sometimes there's a lot of sparring going on because the one doesn't want you to buy from this one. But you need to just manage that. It's human nature. That's the way it goes. But yeah, I think to be responsible is really just to support these people rather than supporting middlemen that really are out taking extra down from you. That's my general feeling.
Yeah, I think that's great that you're encouraging people to do that. In terms of pricing, in my opinion, South Africa is a very reasonably priced destination to go to if you are an international visitor from somewhere like the US or Canada or Europe. It's very reasonably priced. So even paying 20 or 30% more than what a local might pay, it will still be very reasonably priced. And that's for everything, like whether it's stuff you buy off the street or through hawkers, but even accommodations and guiding services. Everything is very reasonably priced, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Discretion is always at the order of the day. So you're not going to stop in the middle of nowhere where there's nobody else in sight or anything. But if you see a whole lot of hawkers together and you're really looking for something, I would definitely say not take the chance, just support them.
I love it. Marian, I know I am excited to come to this part of the world. Seb and I will have 1 week in Africa when we will be coming over and doing our 3 trips in Africa in Q4 this year. And I'm so excited to maybe be coming to this area. I will definitely be checking out everything that you talk about. Tell us again the details about how people can find Old Joe Kaia's accommodation, and if there's anything that you didn't tell us about the accommodation in the introduction of this podcast episode. Go ahead.
Okay. So how do you find Old Joe's Kaia? Google Maps is very specific about Old Joe's Kaia. We actually feature very prominently on it. I always say that is the best way to actually find us, is if you know this is your destination for tonight, then find Google Maps and just type in Old Joe's Kaia and it will guide you 100%. It's extremely easy. As you come out of our Tambo Airport, you just basically have 2 or 3 turns and you're on the highway that comes right past us. So it's 2.5 hours or 3 hours later, but you're still on the same road. So it's really easy to find us. You don't need anything else except that, and you can find that on our website as well. We have very definite directions with a schematic map. I just want to say that if there are many other interests out there, we have spectacular birding at Old Joe's Kaia. For the people out there with the binoculars, just come and sit on our balcony and have your cup of coffee in the morning early. Remember, the sun comes up here. We have really spectacular birds, the purple-crested lory, the Narina trogon, the tambourine dove, and so on and so forth. So there's really some beautiful birds here. I hope it's easy enough for you to find us and to come and enjoy our beautiful place. If you are coming from the opposite direction, so many people use us as the last stop before they go back home, you would just find the same road. It's called the N4 Skommanskloof. Skommanskloof is important because the N4 actually splits and there are 2 roads. So Skommanskloof is the one to go for.
I love it. Marian, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Well Vegan Travel podcast. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bridie, for having us. It was a fantastic opportunity for us also to just chat about how we really would like to share this beautiful place with the rest of the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you.